He's a Las Vegas native, born and bred, graduated from Las Vegas High in 2010. Caleb is a West Point graduate. I want to give him a big hand for being a West Point graduate, by the way. He served in the U.S. Army from 2010 to 2019. He was medically discharged due to a striker training accident in preparation for deployment to Afghanistan. He's married, 8 years, with 2 beautiful children, currently working for American National. His hobbies are ultra cycling, all right, with a recumbent bike, but he is also going to tell you about some of the major events that he's done and some of the world records that he has beaten out there. So please welcome to the floor, Caleb Klein. And this is Striker, by the way, if you haven't met him.
John, thank you very much. I've been coming here for a little over a year and a half since I joined Pro Business Connections. And I always wanted to get up here and speak, but ironically, I hadn't been able to finish my story yet. So thankfully, John had the foresight and life just kind of worked out where last weekend, April 29th and 30th, I was able to at least finish that chapter and set 10 world records on this trike right here. And so he said, you know, we want to get you out to the club, finally be able to speak. And I said, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So, without further ado, tonight I'm going to talk to you about being uniquely able, what that means for me, what that means for you, and I'm going to cap this all off with what the Rusty Dogs of War are and what they are becoming. So this is actually all my sponsors from the event that I just did. And I do appreciate them because without it, this would not have happened. Overcoming adversity, no matter the obstacles. I find often in life that obstacles never stop, but we have the choice whether we want to continue on the journey or if we want to just go home and cry, sit in bed, come up with an excuse why you can't do something, why you won't do something. And I've been there. A lot, more than a lot. And that's why I bring this up tonight, because I was at the lowest of lows. And I wouldn't say that I'm at the highest of highs by any means, but I'm making the choice to move forward each day. And I want to impress upon you the ability to do that comes from yourself. So as John already mentioned, I'm a Las Vegas native, born and bred. I grew up on the east side at Hollywood and Charleston. Graduated from Las Vegas High School 2010, and then about 3 weeks after, went to basic training at West Point, June 2010. Signed the blank check to the Army. My life was going to be in the Army. There was nothing else that I wanted to do. I signed up to do that because when I was 9 years old, and I know I'm aging myself, so I'm 29, but the beard adds about 10 years, so I'll be 30 here in a couple months. 9/11 for me was when I was 9 years old. So at that point, I decided when I'm making my lunch in my kitchen at 9 years old, getting ready to carpool to go to a school that is no longer open, but it was called Paradise Christian Academy. And as my dad can attest, who's sitting here in the front row, I was probably anything but your average child. And I don't mean that to mean that I was more intelligent or more driven. I was just different. I didn't fit in with a lot of kids. I was raised basically as an adult, and so from that point forward, I was laser focused. I'm going to the academy, I'm going to serve my country. Duty, honor, country was my life, and that's the West Point motto. So, I was medically discharged in 2019. My striker accident, which happens to be my service dog's name, so I'm not going to say that very often because he'll get all hyped up. But my striker accident was actually in February 2016. But if anybody in here is part of the armed forces, especially the combat arms, you know that we don't stop what we're doing to go get medical attention unless it's what we consider life, limb, or eyesight. It's got to be a dire need to go seek medical attention. Because honestly, and I'm going to use some real harsh or real terms, this is how I talk, this is how we talk in the military, everyone just thinks you're a bitch. You're not going to go seek medical attention. So I had a hard time walking, but that didn't matter because I had a mission to accomplish. My unit was supposed to deploy to Afghanistan. I had men to lead, I had things to do. So I complained to a couple of my soldiers. I said, look guys, I'm having a hard time walking, but they're all right, well, take some aspirin, take a knee, drink water, and move on with your life. I went and sought, when I did seek medical attention with my PA, his exact words were, all infantrymen have back pain, move on. And I didn't know any better. So I'd only been in the Army for about a year after I had graduated, and I was like, you know what, I'll just take your word for it, you've been here longer than I have. So, that being said, this bike has taken me to do a lot of amazing things, and this has been a massive part of my recovery process. I brought it today because when people hear the word recumbent trike, they have no idea what you're talking about. So please feel free, after this is done, come forward, look at it if you want to sit on it. I literally just cleaned it today. It's probably not going to smell this good for a long time again. So feel free, ask questions, enjoy it. I brought it here so that you guys can see what I do. I've accomplished, thankfully, 3 world championships, and like I said, last weekend, I was able to set 10 world records. Thank you very much. So you've already got a little bit. I like to keep it real. I'm going to talk about mental health and my journey there, and I might even mention some controversial topics. I don't say any of this to offend people, but I want you to understand what you're in for, because this is my life. This is real, and if that's not something that you're interested in, oh, I'm sorry. That's what you're getting tonight. Okay, everybody cool with that? Yeah. All right. This is going to be a little bit interactive, all right? So I'm going to start out with a thought experiment. What I mean by that is I want you to think through a time in your life, what was a struggle that you had, whether that be adversity or trauma, okay? That could be loss. Somebody that was very close to you, somebody that, maybe was a part of your body, the loss of ability to do something. Everybody's got struggles that they automatically go through. That's called being a human being. Then there could be abuse, whether that be verbal, emotional, physical, sexual, etc. Or a sickness, cancer, heart attack, stroke. Everybody's got hard things that they have to deal with in their life. Now I also want you to take a quick inventory of yourself as you sit here tonight. 1. Are you still able to stand, or are you still standing? Are you still breathing, and are you still here? I venture to say the answer to the 3 questions that I just asked is yes. But I'm going to put a pin in that because I'm going to come back to that at the end. All right? So adversity and trauma, according to Webster's, is a state or instance of serious or continued difficulty or misfortune. I would venture to say everybody in this room at some point in their life has gone through or is going through some sort of adversity. Is that correct? Okay. Now trauma, you may have also gone through this or currently be going through this as well. A deeply distressing or disturbing experience. Unfortunately, and oftentimes, especially in the military, those 2 things are not unique or independent. They're often very much together. So, I'm going to paint a picture for you. Imagine a young, inexperienced father, someone who's a family man in a new career, but eager to please and a high achiever. Oh wait, that was me. Okay? This is me as a 21, 22-year-old first lieutenant, second lieutenant in the Army, meaning second lieutenant means I literally just graduated from West Point. I went and did a little bit of training, and then I got sent off to my unit. I don't know shit. Okay? And then I get a new boss. So I'm going to backtrack for a second. I had a fantastic boss who actually was one of my instructors at West Point. And ironically, when you are a cadet at West Point, especially a second semester senior, you will probably never have more power than that in your life. So I walked up to the lieutenant colonel, which means it's a guy who's been in the Army for about 20 years, and he was about to take over a battalion. A battalion's about 700 to 900 soldiers. I said, sir, where are you going? I want to work for you. Not something that happens very often. He said, I'm going to Fort Bliss, Texas. If you don't know where that is, it's El Paso, Texas, which is basically Juarez, Mexico. Okay? I said, great, no problem. I don't care where you're going. You could have told me you were going to hell, and I'm going with you. No problem. He said, great, Caleb, sounds good. So I was able to get that job. I showed up, and he was only my boss for 9 months, because I didn't really know how the Army worked. So he'd been there for a year before I got there, okay? He only got to do that job for 2 years. He was what's called a command select, meaning he is the best of the best and literally got to pick any unit that he wanted to go to, and for some reason he picked that place. So I went there to work for him, but only got him for a short time. Then somebody who I will refer to as Trusty Dusty, or the devil, comes in. And you will understand why I say that here in a second. My new boss was verbally, emotionally, and borderline physically abusive towards me. And everybody in the unit, but especially me. So I walked into my new boss's office after I had just done his change of command ceremony about a week beforehand. And he loved me at that point because he was very political. So he came from a previous job at the Pentagon, where I would venture to say, remember, I didn't know anything as a lieutenant. He was a lieutenant colonel, again, the same rank as the previous gentleman, been in about 20 years, but he's working with 1, 2, 3, and 4-star generals. So he probably got treated the same way that I was getting treated for however long he had been at the Pentagon. So it was time for him to get some repentant, or he wanted to get his payback for whatever reason. And that mostly came on me. Because, as I found out, he was the kind of person that doesn't send out soldiers to back up other soldiers when they're under fire. At his previous unit, people that were in my platoon, which was my 30 to 40 individuals that I was in charge of, said, "Oh, I remember this guy. We planned to kill him outside the wire in a friendly fire incident and make it look like an accident." Because that's how bad of a human being that he was. I didn't understand that, but I will get to that at the time. So I first heard that before I went into my boss's office, the same gentleman that I will refer to as the devil, and said, "Look, sir, hey, it's been real and fun, but I'm not going to get to lead my soldiers into combat because just the timeline's not going to work. The next job that I want is X, and it's not available here. So I would like to go back to Fort Benning, Georgia, and do this job at basic training." He said, "Oh, you're a selfish quitter. You're the biggest piece of shit at this unit. I thought you were duty, honor, country, Caleb. What happened to that?" And then continued the spiral and cycle down where I literally became, to borrow the phrase, his pocket bitch. There's no other way to describe it. I was basically in prison to him for 10 months, doing his bidding, whatever the case may be. Well, what he did not know was this. So there's two questions. I've now explained the scenario. Here's my question to you. How would you survive the situation? Secondly, how do you appease somebody who constantly changes their expectations? I hope you've never had a boss that tells you one thing and then takes another step and tells you another thing and then takes another step and changes their mind again. But unfortunately, that's human nature when somebody is toxic. So, that was him to a T. I already explained that I signed a blank check. There's no revoking a blank check unless you get a medical discharge or you basically turn in your papers and say, "I quit." And I wasn't going to do that. I also mentioned, how do I protect my soldiers that just told me, "Oh, he didn't send out any reinforcements to save people when we were under fire last time and we're going back to a combat zone." So how am I supposed to protect those men when I don't even trust this guy to lead me to the drinking fountain outside of his office? And lastly, how do you outmaneuver the devil? Well, here's what I did. And unfortunately, after 10 months of trauma, I took all that bullshit out on my family. I have a brand new baby. She's now 6. Unfortunately, she got a brunt of it. My wife got the brunt of it. And I was emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually completely shut down. I lost everything of who I was, questioned everything that I thought I knew about life. I was told one day was wrong, the next day was right, just a constant spiral downwards. But officers are not allowed to have problems in any of the military branches. So I just painted a smile on my face and didn't go seek mental health or any medical treatment because that's not allowed. Unfortunately, you can only attempt to appease the devil as long as possible before you plan to destroy him. So, knowing the story about the planned friendly fire incident, I decided to take my concealed carry weapon and put it in my backpack and go to work. And I was gonna solve everybody's problem. Well, God intervened and brought in a major by the name of Steve Eaton. Steve Eaton happened to be at the previous unit and had stopped the friendly fire incident from happening there as well. And he said, Caleb, I know how to handle this guy. I understand all of his idiosyncrasies. Don't ever go into his office alone again. I will handle this. Okay, so if my version of life would have went down, I would probably still be at Fort Leavenworth if I had not offed myself in his office after that. Thankfully, God intervened with the way of Steve Eaton, and now I am here talking about how to overcome adversity. So, there's the first story. Thankfully, my story had just begun. The devil then comes under command climate surveys. Basically, the Army attempts to say, oh, do you guys like your work environment? How's morale? They generally don't really care unless the results are really, really bad. Well, they were really bad. Everybody volunteered to take the survey multiple times so that we could show how bad of an individual he was. So he then goes from being the worst person ever to, hey, how can I help you? And we would look around at each other and say, is he doing okay? Because right now he's in Afghanistan, and he had asked me at this point, do you want to deploy? And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going anywhere with you. I do not trust you at all. You have berated me for the last 10 months. I didn't say any of this, but this was going through my head. I said, no, that's not happening. I'll stay back here, and I will run the entire rear detachment operations by myself. So I basically took over the entire rear detachment and ran the whole thing seamlessly because all the egos and all the drama went downrange to do their job in Afghanistan. Thankfully, at that time again, he comes under review for poor command climate and says, Caleb, how can I help you? I was shocked. I said, get me out of here. Remember, you fired me because I wanted to do something for my family. Well, I still want to do that job, but I never want to see you again. And he said, great, sounds like a plan. So he sends me to Fort Benning, Georgia, the original place that I wanted to go all along. I then end up meeting this gentleman right here, Colonel just retired Franklin Baltazar, and he reestablishes my faith and trust in leadership in the Army. But I met him and right away I said, look, sir, I'm coming from a very, very bad situation, and I'm not going to play politics. So if this is what you expect of me, you got the wrong guy. And I said it in a lot more brash terms than that, but I don't need anybody walking out the door. So he said, fantastic. I like that you're motivated by results. You give me results, and I'm going to give you a company as a first lieutenant, which is completely unheard of. Well, I took the worst company in my battalion. My battalion had 5 companies, and in 90 days, we didn't go from just the best company in my battalion, but almost the best company in my brigade, which is 36 total companies. This here is a picture when I just got Stryker. He was about 10 weeks old. And then my drill sergeant here had worked this bomb dog in Afghanistan twice and was able to adopt her after the fact. So this group of individuals reestablished my faith, trust, and belief that the Army wasn't just out to destroy me and everybody else in between. Leadership actually matters. What a concept. When you only have good leaders, you don't realize that the bad ones can really destroy it for you. Or if you are a leader, remember, how you treat your subordinates actually matters, because when it comes time for them to do things for you, you'll quickly find out how much they trust you. So thankfully, I was able to lead multiple companies. In 16 weeks, we would turn civilians into soldiers, kick them out the door, and say, all right, go do great things for America. One of the most rewarding jobs I have ever had in my life. One of the famous things that we always did at the very end, so before they get their blue cord, which is this shiny little rope right here. We always say, why is the sky blue? Because God loves the infantry. So we wear the blue cord. We're one of the only branches that has basically our unit designator and these crossed rifles that I wear on my chest proudly, because we make these kids go through hell just to get to become a part of the brotherhood. I also learned that family matters, and not that I didn't know that, but you have to take care of those people because they will then take care of you. So this was my change of command, my wife, my 2 daughters. This was in 2019, February. This is the drill sergeant who had the bomb dog, and then my best friend, West Point class of 2015, also happens to be named Caleb, and he is currently in Poland serving our country and waiting to redeploy back to the U.S. And then this is Stryker on his namesake. This is a Stryker vehicle. Again, he was tiny. I used to bring him with me everywhere, and that was one of the beauties of being the boss, was basically nobody could tell me what to do. So I brought him wherever we went. We went out to the training. He got to go be a dog, run around in the woods with the little bomb dog, and they just had a blast. So, unfortunately, though, adversity strikes again. So this is my spine, September 2019. Looks pretty good, right? No, it does not. When I originally got this scoliosis x-ray, I thought it was a stock photo. I said that can't be real, but that does explain all the severe pain and the inability that I have to move. So, not only do I have 3 incorrect curves in my spine, but I also have herniations and degeneration here in the bottom and in my neck. So I used to ride a regular road bike. That's where my love of cycling came from. That clearly is no longer an option. That's how I ended up on the recumbent trike. Again, adversity and trauma will always strike, and then you have the ability or the choice to give up or to continue to work through it. So how do I go from a broken, depressed, suicidal, disabled veteran, heartbroken for losing the only thing I've ever wanted to do in my life, dejected and feeling forgotten, to a 10-time world record and 3-time world champion? This was my group of individuals that was able to help me set the world records here 2 weeks ago. I've got people from Battlefield Vegas, these nice gentlemen in the camo, Trish Nash and her real estate team out in Henderson, and she's running for city council. Pink Box brought so many donuts that Stryker ate 16 of them because we left them on the counter. And Forgotten Not Gone was the original nonprofit that I started working with that, quite frankly, saved my life. I met them 4 days out of the Army, and they showed me what a recumbent trike was and that I had the ability to continue to live and live well. And many, many other nameless individuals that are in this photo. Shane Walker happened to show up. Shane, I appreciate you. My kids, my wife, and some neighbors and friends. Well, this was once again a journey of adversity. So 6 weeks into getting my first trike, which is this yellow guy right here, I decided I want to ride across the country. That is not as easy as it sounds. So I Googled it, thinking I can just go out and do this, but how am I going to do this when I've got a family to support and I've got a life to live? I could do it over probably 30 days. Well, they're going to really have to sign off on that. What if I did it over 15 days? Well, that's going to be a lot of miles. Let me just Google it. Well, Race Across America is a real thing. I don't have an exact date yet, but that is my ultimate goal, to do this on the trike. I will be the first person to ever attempt and finish that race. And my coach is the first and only individual who has taken the only hand cyclist coast to coast, which is over 3,000 miles. We start at Oceanside, right off the pier. We ride to Annapolis, and I will fly a Go Army Beat Navy flag the entire way and plant it at the Naval Academy upon my finish. But that being said, I then found 6 weeks after I got my trike, you have to actually qualify for a 3,000-mile race, which makes a lot of sense. So I called the race director here at Silver State 508. This is a race from Reno to Eureka, Nevada and back, 254 miles each direction. Well, as you can see, I'm really good at breaking things, including myself. So this was my first trike. I was climbing a hill. I shifted and climbed at the same time. Don't do that. I broke my chain, it twisted in half. I broke my shifter. All bad news. So literally, I rode the bike until it stopped. I called the race director and I said, Rob, I'm not quitting, but my bike won't move. Can I go back to Reno? At this point, I was in 10th place overall and 120-ish miles in. Said, can I go back to Reno, get new chains, and come back? He was so impressed with the fact that I didn't quit, because at this point, people have been riding for about 10, 12 hours, and a lot of people have already decided they don't want to do this, which I now understand why, as this has become my passion. So he said, no, but the gentleman who you're looking for is actually racing on the course. I'll call him, see if he's able to help you fix your trike. Well, 5 hours later, he came to the checkpoint that I was at. So I got, now that I know, a very, very long nap and food, and was ready to go again by the time he came back. I apologize, I was at 185 miles. At this point, he then fixes all this to the best of his ability. It was like a NASCAR pit crew. I had never seen 4 individuals fix a bike so fast, and they gave up their first place position to fix my trike. That's the kind of people that I now deal with in the ultra cycling community. His name is Rich Staley. He runs Great Basin Bicycles, fantastic individual. I did not finish this race, unfortunately, because at 315 miles, this then broke again. But I now proved to them, okay, I'm not out here messing around. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm not gonna quit. So the race director connects me with my now coach, who was his athlete, and said, you guys are gonna get along great. Caleb, meet Matt Hoffman, not the BMX bike rider, but another individual who is now my coach, and you will see him later. And he has taken me leaps and bounds in the right direction. This is the finish line. I carry my infantry flag to every race, and whether I finish or not, this gets flown at the finish line. So this is me and Stryker at the finish line. This is, at the time, my crew chief, who currently lives in Pahrump, and unfortunately could not be here tonight, because as you can see, he is missing an arm and a leg, and he has had some recent sicknesses, and he is subsequently down for the count for the moment. But if he was here, I will never forget Shane Walsh. I drove to Pahrump one day to get business. Well, I didn't get the business that I wanted, but I earned a best friend. And he's the first and only person for a long time who believed in this dumbass idea that I was gonna ride my bike coast to coast. And so I didn't finish the first race, which he was at. And he then said, well, what's next? I said, well, we better go find another race. So 4 weeks later, we drove over 1,000 miles in one direction just to not finish the second race. And he did that without stopping. This is the best endurance driver that I know. Once again, I did not finish this race. My flag was in the car. Long story short, we learned that we need to have more than one person in the vehicle following me, because he was driving, trying to fix my food, being my crew chief, and fell asleep at the wheel and almost ran me over. But it's okay, because we're continuing to learn lessons, and they're not the same lessons every time. This is my third race. This is my first world championship. I decided it would be a good idea to sit in my living room for 24 hours and ride my trike, which I accomplished. And I took out all the variables of things that could break or go wrong, because the only thing that could have failed was the power, and it didn't. So, unfortunately, again, I wanted to qualify for Race Across America. Well, that takes 400 miles. I went 375.1, so I was 14.9 short. But we learned what it takes to ride for 24 hours, because this was the first time I was able to do it without malfunctions. After this, I decided, all right, we've got a crew of people together, we're gonna test this out, and I went to do Race Across the West Coast. But before I did that, I needed to make sure that my crew knew each other's names and would get all the pissed off pet peeves out of the way before we showed up to Oceanside. So I rode from my house in Henderson, Nevada to Beatty, which is about 180-ish miles, give or take, and back. So that was 285 miles. We did that for Memorial Day, and I had no malfunctions. Everything was great. So I was riding on a high, because then I went to Race Across the West Coast. What I didn't know when I decided to step off on a 930-mile journey over multiple states was when it's 135 degrees outside and you see how high I sit off the ground, that heat radiates off the pavement at about 180 degrees. Those of you who are not scientists, myself included, come to find out, water boils at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Needless to say, I was halfway through the race, I was delirious, I was borderline heat exhaustion, and I ended up in the hospital because I was unable to continue to pedal. My crew pulled me off the trike, Prescott, Arizona, home of Embry-Riddle University. They put me in this Subaru, they strapped my trike to the back, and we rushed to the hospital. 3 IVs later in an hour and a half, and 1 negative rhabdo test. Rhabdo is where your body basically starts eating itself. Thankfully that didn't happen. They said, all right, you are good to continue. I said, sweet, I've only got 450 miles to go. The doctor said, never mind, you're done. So unfortunately I was unable to finish that race. But I learned new lessons, and we got a lot further than I had expected, because I'm the first person to do this race as well. So after that, I needed a win. So I picked an easy race, only a 200 miler. I went from Logan, Utah to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. This was in the fall of last year. I'm the first person in the history of this race in 39 years to attempt and complete the ride. So this was fantastic. Took me 11 hours, 59 minutes. If my chain hadn't have broken, but I had a spare, I would have finished in 11 hours and 30 minutes. So hopefully I will come back this year and do this race again and actually set an even better record, because purposely I was riding a trike that was twice as heavy to train for World Time Trial Championships. So I chose to ride 24 hours in my living room, but normally when COVID's not a thing, this race is in person in California. So I showed up, and that's how I got these sweet stripes on my kit, because I am a world champion. What I will tell you is that sounds fantastic, but I'm the only person who races, so it's kind of automatic. But I'll take it, because I was still able to do 303 miles with severe food poisoning, and at one point I shit all over the trike and continued on. So, if you want to tell me about your problems, I don't really care. Then I'm riding on a high. 2 months later, I did 6-hour indoor worlds. This is my 3rd world championship, and Stryker hung out for a little while with me. This is what I call the pain cave. Basically, this is connected to an indoor trainer, very similar to a Peloton, and I ride on a program called Zwift. Like Swift, but with a Z. So, all that being said, I've learned a lot of lessons. Many, many times I've wanted to stop because I couldn't keep going. I couldn't figure out a solution. I almost got ran over. I wanted to get run over. I didn't want to keep riding. The list goes on and on. When you push yourself to and past your physical limits at every single race, it's a bit of an emotional event. That being said, I got enough people together and they believed in me enough that I was able to attempt and set 10 world records. What I will tell you is my goal was to set 11. But after this incident, this is supposed to be a video, long story short, no big deal. I rode for 85 miles. I was riding faster than I had ever ridden before, and I thought, perfect, this is exactly what I need. I'm riding by my house. I'm literally a mile from my home. My family's out here. My crew's out here. This is a construction zone, but I have a pickup truck behind me, so it was pretty safe. I will tell you, I officially obeyed all local laws, but I did not. I ran several red lights, and I was moving. Then my right tire explosively blew, so we quickly changed bikes. Then my left wheel fell off this bike. That was not supposed to happen. I didn't know how to fix it. I don't have parts for a British bike in America to solve this problem. But my coach has been racing long enough. He said, crew, go to Lowe's. Hopefully you can find something. We will make this work. So thankfully, they were able to get that fixed. Oh, here's my video. 35.1 miles in, 1 hour and 42 minutes. Doing fantastic. Loving this Birdworks wrapped helmet. Took everything together. See you in a little bit. 25 miles, I was feeling great. That lasted to 85. Look at my face. I was unhappy for many reasons. I just broke the fastest trike on the market. That was not supposed to happen. Then I get on my backup trike, which is not slow, but my front wheels were misaligned. I don't know how this happened, but if you've ever worked really, really hard to not go anywhere, I was extremely frustrated. Oh, by the way, I was going through a set of front tires every 7 miles. My goal was to do 500. That math does not add up. So I pulled in to the pit and I said, Coach, I cannot do this anymore. I am extremely frustrated. I am ready to quit. And oh, by the way, I'm so sick of cycling mirroring my life. I'm done.
After some serious mechanical malfunctions, we are now at the 100K, the 100-mile, and the 6-hour world records, going for the 200K as we speak. More to follow. Everything is back on track. Some fantastic coaching. Matt Hoffman, fantastic support team that I have here today. Rock and roll.
But he said, you already set 3 world records, Caleb. And I said, you're right. He got my head back on straight. And trust me, as my dad is sitting right here, it was not barely on at all. So thankfully I made it to 9 p.m. I started at 9 a.m. 12 hours was my first and only scheduled break that I was going to have. This is my chiropractor, friend, and local Army veteran. Her name is Shelly O'Connor. She comes with me to every major race. She adjusted me. She put new KT tape on me, which is basically fancy athletic tape that helps support my very straight spine. And then we did a little bit of leg compression. If you're familiar with Normatec or anything like that, I have a company called Rapid Reboot out of Utah, and they back me, and then I have a massage gun. Thankfully, Coach even gave me a sandwich, so kind of put a smile on my face. Then I started riding at night. I rode from 9 to 3, and this is what I like to call the witching hour, around 3 to 5 a.m. That's when your demons really come out to play. Oops. Why I say that is because no one's on the road, you're very tired, you would rather be sleeping, caffeine kind of stops working at a certain point, and then you find out how bad you want it. Well, I wanted it so bad that I fell asleep riding my bike. I came in right here, and this is not my tire tracks, but I came in right here, asleep, pulled over, and they pulled me off the bike, and I was so tired that I took a homeless veteran nap on the sidewalk. They gave me all of 30 minutes, and then woke me up and said, do you want to keep riding? And I was like, I thought I was. I was dreaming that I was riding. Anyways, they hit me with some caffeine. Long story short, I did make it to about 5:36, completely ran out of energy, couldn't even get across the red light. They pulled me off the bike again. They gave me 30 more minutes of sleep and allowed me to change my clothes because I'm sure I smelled delicious. And then this happens. We finished 24 hours and set 10 world records. The important part was 2 things. I didn't stop, even though I wanted to many times, and that is because of the people that you have surrounding you will dictate your success. The guy who doesn't like to get any credit, so he hides behind the banner, is my coach. Then my 2 children, my dad, a 77-year-old Vietnam double Purple Heart Force Recon Marine from Arizona, a retired Special Forces operator from Utah, my chiropractor, she was communications in 10th Mountain, unfortunately a Navy veteran, but a great friend, and the only other person I know that rides a recumbent trike in the world and attempts to do it at the level that I do. another infantryman who flew out from Texas, and my wife. Without these people, this event would not have happened. So, thankfully I was able to set 10 records. Again, I was attempting 11. I'm very good at making lofty goals that may be too much to chew, but sure sound good when you talk about it. So, here's the video at the end. I was able to go 322.9 miles, which is 519 kilometers for whoever doesn't believe in America.
You have set 10 world records for 100 kilometer, 200 kilometer, 500 kilometer, 100 mile, 200 mile, 6 hours, 12 hours, and 24 hours for recumbent trikes on a road course. Your final mileage was 322.913 miles and 519.677 kilometers. You rode for 24 hours, 35.4 seconds. Congratulations.
So I asked these 3 questions again. We talked about a lot of bad things that happened to me. We've even potentially brought up some memories of bad things that have happened to you. But when those 3 things happen, you have to have the ability to reground yourself in reality. Because I am great at spinning out of control, not wanting to get out of bed, some days not getting out of bed, feeling sorry for myself, but the world keeps moving. So I ask you again, are you still standing, or do you have the ability to stand? Are you still breathing, and are you still here? With those 3 tenets, I am officially announcing for the first time that I am starting the Rusty Dogs of War 501c3 nonprofit. I am doing this because I realize there is a major gap in the ability of nonprofits to support individuals like myself who want to race, whether that be as dumb as 24, 48, 12 days, whatever the case may be, or something much shorter. So, I actually have my first athlete, and he's unable to be here tonight. He lives in Pahrump, a medically discharged field artilleryman, broke his leg when his parachute didn't open, and he landed and somehow survived. I want to help people through endurance sports, swimming, cycling, and running, because they are not just physical, but mental and emotional therapy. And I've done a lot of therapy, but the best thing that the VA has done for me was buy me a trike and let me go. We will create a community through culture, a morale booster, and welfare for veterans who feel lost and alone, but help them remember that they are not forgotten. Thank you.
What questions do you have for Caleb here? First of all, how do you go to the bathroom? Do you just pee while you're riding?
I do pee while I ride.
Okay.
I do not poop while I ride on purpose. Why I do that is because anytime you stop, time adds up very quickly. So what's next? I was supposed to redo the race across the West. Because of some family constraints and concerns, I have decided to postpone that. I'm potentially looking at doing the Saints to Sinners relay from Utah, Salt Lake City to Vegas with Caleb, the other Caleb, not me, and any other cyclist veterans that want to join. That will potentially be, if we get everybody on board, the first official event with the nonprofit. My next official race will be in November, 24-hour World Time Trial Championships again. Instead of going for 500 miles, my goal is 400. I haven't actually broken that yet, and it would be nice to qualify for Race Across America, even though I won't do that for a couple more years, because it's rather costly. Does that answer your question?
Question?
Any other questions? Please.
Did you choose that type of a bike because of your back and your scoliosis, or?
I did. So I attempted one last time to ride a regular upright road bike when I got out of the Army. I did an event called Project Hero. It's around Veterans Day. We rode down the strip from the Smith Center, climbed all the way, which it was a 40-mile ride back when I thought 40 miles was far. We climbed into Red Rock, and I only literally finished the ride because the last 20 miles was downhill. I could not barely move, I could barely pedal, but who finishes next to me with a smile on their face? A gentleman who's riding a trike. And I said, why is this so easy for you? And he said, let me connect you with the VA, with the recreational therapy department, and the rest is history. So, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So your problem was the scoliosis, is that
Yes.
correct?
Scoliosis, herniation, and degeneration of my discs in my lower back and my neck. Has any of that gotten any better? My chiropractor would tell you my posture, no.
Well, I think a lot of us here suffer from that, so tell us about Ryder, bring them up, bring your dog.
Striker, come here. So this is Striker. I've had Striker, as you saw, for 8 weeks. I use him not just for physical, but also emotional need. But the amazing thing is if I get down, I generally don't get up without his aid. So I can tell him to brace, and then I'll put my hands on his hips to help me get up and off the floor. There is a fantastic nonprofit here called Michael's Angel Paws. They train service dogs, free for veterans. Cannot rave about them enough. I happened to meet them one day when I was out and about trying to figure out what I was going to do with Striker because I already had him. And they said, don't worry, we will finish this up for you and do it to the best of our ability. So, sits. Yeah, okay, you want to lay down. Or he's going to fart on me. Sit. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What does the chiropractor do with the tape? Does that help strengthen your back?
It just gives me a little bit of support. So if it was a regular joint like an ankle or something like that, you can ace wrap something to give it some stiffness. Not so easy when everything's it's supposed to be up and down, but there's a couple extra curves in there. So basically we tape all the way down from my neck to my lower back. Sometimes we do some shoulders just to allow some proper support so I can make that journey a little less arduous. The reason I bring that up, there's no shocks on this thing. Basically, if you imagine a Ferrari with no frills, I feel every bump on the road. So if the road is great, the ride is great. If the road sucks, the ride sucks. But I don't have a choice, I just gotta take it. So that's why we do the KT tape. Any other questions?
So the reason that you're laying prone, almost prone.
Yes, ma'am.
Is because of the scoliosis.
Correct. It takes all the weight off my hips and directs it basically, I'm happy to sit down, or you can see in this photo right here, just basically directs it all on the legs. It's great when I'm going downhill. It's not fun going uphill. And that's when this training really comes into play of how bad do you want this? Generally once a month I'll ride from my house to Pahrump. If you've made that drive from the base of that hill, it's a 10-mile climb. But the beauty of it is when you get going down the other side, I have a 30-mile descent into town, which is great until I decide I want to come home. Then it's a 30-mile climb out of Pahrump. However, I have broken over 65 miles an hour coming back down the other side. So at least there's some enjoyment with some serious butthole clenching to make sure that I don't die. But it is really fun when a car rolls up next to you and the speed limit's 65 and I'm just riding in the car lane because they're like, what are you doing? And then I just attempt to wave or smile without dying. So
How fast do you go with your things?
I've gone over 65 miles an hour. Yes, ma'am.
Did you have to pedal in any rain conditions?
I absolutely have. So when I did Lodaja, which is Logan, Utah to Jackson Hole, after the first hour, we got rained on for about 30 to 40 minutes, torrential downpour. I enjoyed it because it was kind of hot, to be honest, and it had been humid. And it's also funny when I get to watch all these regular upright cyclists diving into porta potties because they want to put on rain gear. If you've been outside and you've gotten wet, you then generally dry off when the sun comes out. But when you're wearing plastic, that doesn't work. Then it traps it all in. So then they had to get off the bike again, and I'm just like, well, I'll just continue on. I'm going to dry off eventually. It's a 12-hour ride. So I had a good time with it. Usually when the weather gets real bad or just the conditions, I throw on some Army cadences and just show people how mentally stable or unstable I can tend to be by driving through it, and they just look at me like, this guy's nuts. And I'm like, well, I'm glad we understand that, so thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
How does how Stryker helps you on a day-to-day basis, not just on?
Day-to-day basis, at the end of the day, and my manager's here, he puts a smile on everybody's face. I am not the extroverted person who wants to go meet everybody and shake hands, but I'm also an insurance agent. Well, you kind of need to have clients in order to be successful. Everybody remembers my dog. He forces me to meet people. He generally breaks the ice. We talk about him or their pet or both, or their grandkids or whatever the case may be, because you realize that I'm a human being, not just an insurance agent. And then we get down to brass tacks. I like to say Stryker does the selling, and I just sign the paperwork. But at the end of the day, he makes everybody happy, including myself. My kids love him. My wife has come around to accept him. She was not the biggest fan when we first got him, and that's perfectly fine. And now he is an integral part of my family. So,
And what kind of insurance do you use?
what do you need? Because I'll solve your problems. Yes, ma'am. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Would you do it all again?
I would sign. I have dreams about going back in the Army and shaving my beard when I wake up because they need me. I have realized that will never happen, and I am perfectly okay with that. But I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right. Really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.
All right, so stick around, everybody. No need to leave. Plenty of networking to do, and have a couple